You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Simple math, I think, was made clear that there's not a path.
Facing an uphill confirmation battle, Matt Gaetz withdraws his nomination for Attorney General. Donald Trump's response and what happens now. And surging support for nuclear energy, where plants are popping up nationwide. And later, holiday shopping usually means big business for retailers, why one of the country's largest retail chains is trying to temper expectations. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thanks for joining us. On this Weekend Edition, we take a look at the big headlines of the week, and we look ahead at what to expect, starting with the four big stories we've been following this week. Cabinet nominations continue pouring in as President-elect Trump prepares for his second term in office. And cheaper turkeys. The holiday season has come with some reprieve as grocery prices trend downward. The cost of a 10-person meal now at its lowest point since 2022. Plus, Ukraine landmines. The U.S. makes a major policy shift as the war in Ukraine hits 1,000 days. The new ordinance the embattled country just got the green light to use. And holiday travel. TSA braces for a record number of travelers over Thanksgiving. Everything you need to know to arrive at your destination on time. But first, a looming fight over whether or not former Congressman Matt Gaetz would be the next leader of the Department of Justice appears to be over now. National correspondent Matt Gelka has more on Gaetz' decision to withdraw from seeking the nomination, even as President-elect Trump still supported him.
Donald Trump's controversial pick to be the next Attorney General, former Congressman Matt Gaetz, took himself out of the running after meeting with senators this week to gauge his chances as the pressure was mounting. Gaetz posted his decision on X, saying, "While the momentum was strong, it is clear that my confirmation was unfairly becoming a distraction to the critical work of the Trump-Vance transition." Trump responded on Truth Social by praising Gaetz, saying, "Matt has a wonderful future, and I look forward to watching all of the great things he will do." Gaetz was facing personal scandals, including investigations into inappropriate sexual encounters, potentially with a minor. Gaetz had denied the allegations and never faced charges, but being named by Trump put increased scrutiny on a still unreleased House Ethics Committee report looking into the allegations.
Matt Gaetz was never qualified to hold this position, but that was actually kind of the point. He was nominated not to actually execute the duties of Attorney General, as America would expect that person to do, but rather to be a loyalist and to exact retribution on Donald Trump's perceived enemies.
Can't disagree with the decision Matt Gaetz made. He was controversial. He understood that. I actually appreciate the fact that he withdrew so that President Trump can put somebody else in place, maybe less controversial. But let's face it, this is going to be a pitched battle. I've been a target of the corruption within the FBI, so I know exactly why President Trump wants to have somebody who's incredibly loyal.
The attorney for the alleged victims at the center of the Gaetz scandals said, "My clients are relieved to have this chapter behind them and eager to move forward with their lives. We're hopeful this brings final closure for all parties involved." Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
President-elect Donald Trump quickly nominated former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi just 6 hours after Matt Gaetz bowed out from being the first nomination. Bondi was one of Trump's lawyers during his first impeachment trial and supported him at his hush money criminal trial in New York. Bondi is also the chair at the pro-Trump think tank America First Policy Institute. On Friday, Trump shared on social media that, quote, "Pam will refocus the DOJ to its intended purpose of fighting crime and making America safe again." President-elect Trump has also nominated Howard Lutnick as Secretary of Commerce. The billionaire is currently the CEO of financial services firm Cantor Fitzgerald. He has also served as the co-chair of Trump's presidential transition team since August. Lutnick is a vocal supporter of Trump's plan to use tariffs once in office. Trump will name his other transition co-chair, Linda McMahon, as Education Secretary. The former CEO of the WWE, McMahon, served as the administrator of the Small Business Administration during Trump's first term. She's currently the board chair of the America First Policy Institute. Longtime news anchor Katie Couric said she was frustrated by answers Vice President Kamala Harris gave throughout her campaign. On Thursday, speaking with former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki on Couric's podcast, the two discussed that it didn't seem like Harris prepared for interviews with her team enough. Couric said, quote, "I would have had a template that I would have carried around with me in every interview, and I would have reviewed them and said, you know, this is what I believe, and this is how I'm going to handle a question like that." Adding that Harris's interview with Fox News was an example of when she communicated well. More people are looking to buy in the housing market despite mortgage rates increasing last week. According to the Mortgage Bankers Association, total applications for mortgages climbed about 1.7% compared to the week before. That's even as rates for a long-term mortgage inched up to about 6.8%, the highest level since late July. The Federal Reserve's mega rate cut earlier this fall initially caused mortgage rates to dip before they started up again, driven by uncertainty in the market ahead of another President-elect Trump term. Public support for nuclear power is the highest it's been in more than a decade, and now nuclear power plants are popping up all across the country. Emma Withrow from the Fact Check team joins us now to discuss. So for decades, nuclear power has gotten such a bad rap. So what's changed?
So a lot's changed. Some people are concerned about climate change these days, obviously, and nuclear power doesn't contribute to climate change in the same way that some other energy sources do. So nuclear power produces nearly zero carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gas emissions, which a lot of people think is going to be beneficial for the environment.
So are some of the old nuclear power plants reopening, or are there new ones being built, a mix?
Yeah, a little bit of both. In Texas, they have plans to attract a whole new fleet of new generation nuclear power plants that would be built throughout the state. On the other hand, though, 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania is actually opening back up. They were the site of the worst disaster that's happened in the U.S.
Yeah, that's generated a lot of buzz, the decision to reopen. Nuclear power plants, we know, are used to generate electricity in a lot of ways. What's the purpose of this reactor that's reopening?
So that all has to do with Microsoft. So Microsoft's going to be buying all the electricity from the reactor at 3 Mile Island. They'll use that to power data centers, other infrastructure, and also most likely their growing AI efforts.
Which we know takes a ton of power.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Emma, thank you. Later on, Janae Bowens will be back to break down some of the challenges of nuclear power. New video here as the Houston Zoo is celebrating the birth of baby Kirby, an Asian elephant looking very cute and maybe a little surprised. Kirby was born last Friday. Mom, a 35-year-old Asian elephant, went through a 19-hour labor to give birth to the healthy 314-pound female. Kirby was up and walking within the first 30 minutes, and both are doing well. The U.S. food supply is still one of the safest in the world, and that's what the Food and Drug Administration is saying, despite a number of recent outbreaks and recalls affecting a wide range of items like carrots and deli meat. The National News Desk, Jeff Harris, joins us with more.
An infectious disease specialist I spoke with says technology and testing has kept the U.S. food supply the safest in the world. But a food science expert believes there just isn't enough data for the FDA to make this claim. From organic carrots to McDonald's Quarter Pounders, the U.S. has seen a number of foodborne disease outbreaks this year. But William Schaffner, an infectious disease specialist, and Leanne Jacobs, a food science expert, believe our food supply isn't in jeopardy.
Absolutely, the U.S. food supply is the safest in the world.
I would say that the food supply is certainly secure.
Schaffner says a big reason why is because of advancements in technology. Scientists can now take microbiological fingerprints of specific E. coli, salmonella, or listeria cases and track where it came from.
Our improvement in technology has really helped keep our food supply even safer.
But Francisco Diaz, a food science expert, tells us his opinion is split. On one hand, there's no way to prove the U.S. is the safest.
I don't think that we have any way to claim that position.
But he does agree that the U.S. is leading the way in how outbreaks are tracked.
We are a country that it has the tools to be able to report those cases.
According to data cited by the FDA, high-risk recalls were not unusually high this past year, 179 compared to 145 in 2023, which is another reason why Jacobs believes there should be no major concern about the food supply.
Statistically speaking and practically speaking, as safe as it's always been.
Now the CDC is also reporting the number of high-profile recalls have slightly gone up this year. 10 multi-state foodborne outbreak notices have been issued this year compared to 9 last year. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
A little reprieve this Thanksgiving. The holiday dinner will cost less this year, according to the American Farm Bureau Federation's annual Thanksgiving survey. The average cost of this year's dinner for 10 people is $58. That's a 5% drop from 2023, but still 19% higher than before the pandemic. The centerpiece of the meal, the turkey, has helped bring down the overall cost. According to the Federation, the average price for a 16-pound turkey is $25. More than 183 million people are now planning to shop in store and online from Thanksgiving Day through Cyber Monday. According to a new National Retail Federation survey, 57% cited good deals as their main reason for shopping, and retailers say they're ready with great prices and plenty of inventory. Holiday spending is expected to hit nearly $1 trillion this year. So to come, Israeli lawmaker David Rubin joins us to discuss the incoming Trump administration and the horrors he and his 3-year-old son experienced during a Hamas attack. And the U.S. gives permission to Ukraine to up its ordnance. How the new weapons will help stop a looming Russian advance. Donald Trump's election victory has given Israeli lawmakers renewed hope for their country as they battle threats on several fronts. Former mayor of Shiloh, Israel, David Rubin, is one of them, and he sat down with our own Jan Jeffcoat earlier this week.
David, thank you for joining us. It's an honor to speak with you.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
I know October 7th, 2023 changed everything there with your country under the constant threat of Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. What's happening there right now? How are you and your family?
Yeah. Well, look, we're a country in national trauma ever since that massacre on October 7th, and in the midst of a full-scale war on about 7 different fronts. And you have to understand that we're a tiny country about the size of New Jersey. So, if we have a war on 7 fronts, wow. Then try and imagine that. Try and imagine that in New Jersey.
Yeah, it's unimaginable, honestly. It is, just everything that we see on television. What are some things we don't see? What are some things that you've experienced that people haven't seen?
Well, what you don't see is the national trauma that the country is in, and from all the terrorism and all the wars, I established the Shiloh Israel Children's Fund, or Shiloh Israel Children's Fund, as we call it here in Israel, 20 years ago, as a result of a horrible terror attack in which I was wounded along with my 3-year-old son, who was shot in the head. But since then, we've been doing great work on behalf of the children in healing the trauma of the terror victim children and restoring some of the lost innocence to their lives. So I would encourage your viewers to go to israelchildren.com to get more information about that.
I read about your story, and it was just a miracle that you survived that. How did you survive it?
How do we survive it? Well, resilience. You have to understand that when there is darkness, there's always some light that's supposed to come out of it. And so after it happened to us, and after seeing thousands of children who have been scarred from the terrorism, so I said, okay, what is the vision that the Almighty is trying to give me? And it became clearer as we saw how we can heal trauma in young children. And I saw that through my very own son, my 3-year-old.
Wow.
And that's what led to the Shiloh Israel Children's Fund and what we're doing on behalf of the children.
I know this happened back in 2001. It's so interesting how now that fund is more important now than ever with what the children there are experiencing there.
That's for sure.
How is foreign policy under a Trump administration going to differ from the previous administration when it comes to Israel and defeating terrorism?
Well, look, I knew about Trump before because I wrote the book Trump and the Jews. And so I did research about Trump, and I followed him very closely. And Trump has a very strong sense of standing with America's allies, and especially Israel. And we've seen since he started making all of these appointments that there are 6 foreign policy appointments that specifically can relate to Israel, and they've all been very, very positive. And basically, of the philosophy that you need to stand with Israel, give it the support that it needs, and let it do the job. We don't want American boots on the ground. I want to be very clear about that. But we would like our American ally to stand with us, and I believe under Trump that's going to happen.
The threat from Iran, we know, is extreme right now. It is the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. What is the best way to confront Iran and its nuclear ambitions?
The best way to confront it is head on. And mostly militarily. I would like to say that economic sanctions will do the job alone. It won't. At this point, it won't. Trump was on the right track 4 years ago in having crippling sanctions. Biden reversed those sanctions, and now they are at such an advanced point in their nuclear weapons program that they're going to have to be confronted militarily. And that's the main way. Yes, you can have crippling sanctions again, but they have to be confronted militarily. There's no way around it.
And I wish we had more time to talk to you about this, but I hope we can talk to you in the coming weeks and days. Former mayor of Asheville, Israel, David Rubin, and your organization, I know, helping tons of children right now. We appreciate you joining us this morning. Again, that organization, www.israelchildren.com. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you, Jen.
And the U.S. has vetoed a UN Security Council resolution demanding a ceasefire in Gaza. Washington had made clear it would only support a resolution that explicitly calls for the immediate release of hostages. At least 100 hostages who were taken by Hamas on October 7th are still being held in the territory, including 7 Americans. The U.S. is now letting Ukraine use American-made anti-personnel landmines against Russia. It marks another major policy shift by the Biden administration, just days after granting permission for Ukraine to use American-made long-range missiles.
And because of the way that the fight has evolved, this is just another stage here. But again, our focus is to help them, to meet their needs.
And U.S. officials claim the landmines will be non-persistent, meaning they'll die when the battery runs out. Coming up next year on the National News Desk, police disrupt a crime ring they say is responsible for over $100,000 in damages, and a home explosion rocks an Ohio neighborhood. Neighbors react as the blast takes 2 lives. The National News Desk team of reporters is bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin in Washington state, where a lack of police presence has residents saying they're having to deal with a growing crime problem on their own.
Called 911, no police response. Eventually, I was able to talk to an officer right before midnight, but the restaurant's closed.
That same night, 2 men kicked in the back door at Wild Mountain Cafe and started searching for valuables.
Went to the office, went through all the do-bags and tips, took everything.
Owner Kevin Aylesworth says police did show up, but the investigation that followed fell short.
There were no fingerprints taken. You know, it was a large sum of money, and there was no other investigation past that.
Seattle police say they were on scene within 8 minutes, but the suspects were already gone. Neighbors say they know that staffing shortages limit the police department's ability to respond, but something more needs to be done.
There's people that are calling 911 and they're not getting a response.
Fire officials in Tate Township, Ohio, say a house explosion killed 2 people and injured a 3rd earlier this week. Neighbors reported hearing a loud boom before heading outside to check out the commotion.
And then as I came outside, it was snowing, insulation, pieces of the house in my driveway, in my yard. Seen neighbors coming down, We all wanted to help, but there was nothing that we could have done.
Neighbors say an HVAC worker was at the home and made it out. Investigators are still trying to determine the cause. A string of Las Vegas robberies finally thwarted. Police arresting a suspect connected to 34 reported business thefts dating back to June. Thefts that resulted in over $100,000 in damages.
It reaches beyond the money. It's just the feeling of being violated and your hard work. And, you know, the money that gets stolen in the restaurant is nothing compared to the damage that they do, the broken glass, the broken doors.
Multiple businesses say they are looking forward to strengthening relationships with Metro Police. Coming up, business is booming for Walmart, the surprising income bracket that has the retailer raking in money. Plus, Beyonce announces her Christmas plans, why the global superstar might be spending the holiday in your living room. Taking a look at the top trending stories on our website right now, a piece of art consisting of a banana duct taped to a wall sold for, get this, $6.2 million on Wednesday. Cryptocurrency entrepreneur Justin Sun had the top bid, saying the piece represents a cultural phenomenon. The super rare oarfish, commonly referred to as the doomsday fish, washed up on the shores of California earlier this week. This is the second time in just a few months that the deep water species was found dead in shallow California waters. And Delta Airlines announces it will soon serve its first-class flyers Shake Shack. Yum. The airline announced a partnership with a popular fast food chain to serve cheeseburgers on long-distance domestic flights beginning in December. Those stories and much more available right now at thenationaldesk.com. Lawyers for President-elect Trump are asking the judge to dismiss his criminal conviction in New York. They want until December 20th to file a motion to dismiss the 34-count felony conviction for falsifying business records to make hush money payments. This all comes after Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg argued the case shouldn't be dismissed just because Trump won the election. Bragg argues the case should be frozen until 2029 so Trump can be sentenced once he leaves office.
Think about it. What, are we going to have a president on bond for 4 years? Is this case really going to be pending for 5 years? Is that really what the public wants? Is that really for the greater good? And that's ridiculous. This case needs to go away.
Federal law prohibits sitting presidents from being prosecuted or sentenced. Target is expecting, I should say, a surprisingly weak holiday shopping season. The company forecast Wednesday sales during the final quarter of the year will be flat. It also lowered its profit forecast and reported a sluggish sales increase of just 0.3% during its latest quarter. Target is struggling in part because its core middle-class customer base has been strained by higher prices overall. Meantime, Walmart's business is surging, and customers making more than $100,000 a year are fueling the growth. The company's U.S. sales at stores open for at least a year grew more than 5% last quarter compared to the same quarter a year ago. Profit grew more than 8%. Walmart said it gained market share in the quarter, driven primarily by upper-income households. The number of Americans applying for unemployment benefits fell again last week. New Labor Department data finds claim applications fell by 6,000 to 213,000. But the total number of Americans collecting jobless benefits rose to its highest in 3 years, suggesting people are finding it harder to land new jobs. Economists say this indicates demand for workers is lessening, though the economy remains strong. Massachusetts Institute of Technology is waiving tuition for families making less than $200,000. Students can expect to attend the Cambridge institution tuition-free starting next fall. The new policy will cover 80% of its incoming classes. Students whose family income is below $100,000 will see their entire MIT experience paid for, including tuition, housing, dining, fees, and an allowance for books and personal expenses. Looking ahead, if you're flying somewhere this Thanksgiving, brace yourself for a lot of company. Leaders of the Transportation Department, Federal Aviation Administration, and TSA say they expect more Americans to travel for this holiday than ever. TSA expects the busiest days will be the Tuesday and Wednesday before Thanksgiving and the Sunday after. That Sunday, TSA plans to screen more than 3 million passengers.
This will be the busiest Thanksgiving ever in terms of air travel.
And officials say they are prepared for the holiday surge and have taken measures to increase staffing and ensure passengers make it through TSA in 30 minutes or less. If you're flying, they say get to the airport early and double check the TSA prohibited items list. Looking ahead, Beyonce will now perform during halftime when the Texans take on the Baltimore Ravens on Christmas Day. Netflix confirming the Houston performance earlier this week. Netflix didn't reveal many details about the halftime performance, but did tease some possible guest features from Beyonce's album Cowboy Carter. Netflix will stream 2 NFL games on Christmas Day this year, including the Kansas City Chiefs versus Pittsburgh Steelers. And a lawsuit is filed in the wake of a Colorado mass shooting that left 5 dead and many more wounded. Accusations the massacre could have been avoided if officials enforced state law. You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now. You can catch us live weekdays from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time, and anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. We'll be right back. You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now.
God gives us free choice. And she made free choice that night to end her life.
Heart-wrenching pleas 30 years after a mother drowns her 2 sons. Susan Smith's words to a parole board.
If they are a gang member in Haiti, if they are a Cuban political operative, we don't know that.
Biden border security, the parole program, Republicans say is full of red flags. Plus, a new technology is coming to airports, how AI will make arriving at the airport an easier experience. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and new information out of South Carolina. A state board denied Susan Smith parole 30 years after she drowned her 2 sons. The story gripped the heart of the nation in 1994. The National News Desk, Jennifer Emmert, has the emotional pleas made during the hearing earlier this week.
I know that what I did was so horrible. And I would give anything if I could go back and change it.
It's been 30 years since the first time, but again, Susan Smith had the country hanging on her pleas.
I didn't lie to get away with it. I really didn't. I was just scared. I didn't know how I could tell the people that loved them that they would never see them again. I didn't know how I could tell David he couldn't see his son again.
Smith appeared virtually from Leith Correctional Institution, directing those pleas at South Carolina's Pardons and Paroles Board.
What do you think is the most important thing that you have learned while you have been incarcerated?
That people are important, that forgiveness and love, that family is important.
During the lies Smith told about her boys being kidnapped in 1994, David Smith, their father, unaware of the lies, stood by her side. Today, that wasn't the case.
God gives us free choice. And she made free choice that night to end their life. This wasn't a tragic mistake. It wasn't something that she didn't mean to do. She purposely meant to end their life.
It was 30 years ago, October 25th, that a 23-year-old Susan Smith stood on the boat ramp at John D. Long Lake in Union County. In her confession letter, she claimed she was ready to take her life along with her kids, but she stopped, instead pushing the car in with 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alexander still in their car seats. In 1995, when a jury sentenced Susan Smith, they couldn't be told a life sentence would make Susan Smith eligible for parole in 30 years, leading David and his family to today. He argued 15 years for each of the 2 boys' lives wasn't enough.
So I'm asking that you please deny her parole today. And hopefully in the future, but specifically today. Not let her out. I miss them very much. And I love them very much. And I will be here every 2 years going forward.
Just heartbreaking. New details. A former University of Virginia student pleaded guilty to shooting and killing 3 football players and hurting 2 other students. The incident happened in 2022. 25-year-old Christopher Jones Jr., a former member of the university's football team, pleaded guilty to several charges. Prosecutors read a summary of what they say happened. In the hours before the shooting, they allege Jones texted an adult he's known for years, saying, "Tonight I'm either going to hell or jail. I'm sorry." A 4-day sentencing hearing is scheduled to open in February. New lawsuits claim the deadly Club Q mass shooting in Colorado Springs could have been prevented. The 2 suits allege El Paso County officials failed to enforce the state's red flag law. The law prevents people from buying or owning firearms. The lawsuits note that the 22-year-old convicted shooter had a history of violent threats and behavior. 5 people were killed and 19 others were injured in the 2022 massacre. For years, Capitol Hill lawmakers, they have failed to agree on immigration reform, leaving most actions to the White House. A program launched by President Biden to help border agents is in crisis, now under heavy scrutiny from House Republicans. Here's national correspondent Christine Frizzell.
Between June and October of this year, illegal crossings at the southern border have decreased by 64%, in large part because many migrants have instead come through the Biden administration's parole program.
Today, I'm announcing that my administration is going to expand the parole program for people not only from Venezuela, but from Cuba, Nicaragua, and Haiti.
The CHNV program has allowed for 30,000 migrants a month to be flown into the country using the CBP One app, as long as a U.S.-based sponsor agreed to support them. And they had a background check. But critics say these countries don't share information with U.S. authorities, which means most are not actually vetted.
If they are a gang member in Haiti, if they are a policeman in Nicaragua who's got blood on his hands, if they are a Cuban political operative, we don't know that.
The program was forced to temporarily shut down over the summer after the Department of Homeland Security discovered 101,000 sponsor applications were filed by fewer than 3,300 so-called sponsors.
What do these findings tell us about this program?
Well, they tell us that it's riddled with fraud.
A House Judiciary Committee investigation led GOP lawmakers to call it a fraud-ridden, unmitigated disaster, finding the program was likely used by sex traffickers to exploit women and girls, and that U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services approved sponsors who admitted they plan to use income derived from criminal activity. Many of those sponsors also using the same exact response on more than 1,800 applications. Science Judiciary Committee member Tom McClintock says should have been immediate red flags.
20, 30 applications will have the same Social Security number. Many more will have fraudulent addresses, fraudulent zip codes.
The parole program is expected to be halted as soon as President-elect Donald Trump takes office. What we don't know is how many people living and working here under the program could become targets for his mass deportation plan. I'm Christine Frizzell,
for the National News Desk.
Spirit Airlines has filed for bankruptcy. The company struggled to recover from the drop in travel at the height of the pandemic. Spirit lost more than $2.5 billion since the start of 2020. The biggest U.S. budget airlines also struggled after a failed attempt to merge with JetBlue. Spirit officials say the bankruptcy process should not create any issues for travelers. New information on another study linking intensified hurricanes to human-caused climate change. Since 2019, 40 hurricanes jumped an entire category. The cause? Warmer oceans. In the last 6 years, hurricane winds have been 18 miles stronger on average. That includes this year's 3 most devastating storms, Beryl, Helene, and Milton. The research was published in the journal Environmental Research Climate. Nuclear power was once shunned because of things like cost and safety concerns. The Fact Check team's Janae Bowens joins us now with why it's once again being sought out. So let's start with the positives. What are the benefits?
Yeah, Dee, so nuclear energy can generate electricity without emitting any planet-warming greenhouse gases. Now, nuclear is the largest source of clean power in the U.S., generating about 775 billion kilowatt hours of electricity each year. The Office of Nuclear Energy adds it supports national security. The industry is also responsible for nearly 500,000 jobs across the country, and many of those workers have salaries that are 50% higher than those of other generation sources.
All right, and then on the other side of this, what are the concerns? What are the challenges?
Yeah, so nuclear energy is viewed as dangerous because of the 3 global nuclear accidents, its false association with nuclear weapons, and how it is portrayed on TV shows and movies. That's according to the Office of Nuclear Energy. Now, the industry is working to develop new reactors and fuels that will increase performance, cut costs, and reduce the amount of nuclear waste. The nuclear waste is stored at more than 70 sites in 35 states until a permanent disposal solution is determined by Congress.
All right, and as we hear more about AI, it'll be interesting to see efforts in this field as well. Janae, thank you. For more on this Fact Check team topic, including links to their sources, scan the QR code on your screen or visit thenationaldesk.com. Oregon is celebrating a new electric vehicle milestone after state officials say more than 102,000 electric vehicles have been registered. 5 years ago, it was at 27,000. The Oregon Department of Environmental Quality says transportation is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, contributing more than 1/3 of total emissions. The state set a lofty goal of 250,000 EVs on the road by 2025. The San Antonio International Airport has unveiled new AI technology that allows travelers to have an easier parking experience. You'll need to create an account and register your license plate. The tech will read the plates to let you in without a ticket. If you're flying domestically on certain flights, you'll be able to check luggage in the garage. Still to come, our team of correspondents breaks down this week in Washington, from the Trump administration's plan to make the government more efficient to a pair of postponed security briefs that has lawmakers on both sides of the aisle concerned.
And welcome back. Our Washington Bureau covers the nation's capital every day, and our team of correspondents reports on the important issues facing the country and how they impact you. More details emerging about President-elect Donald Trump's, quote, Department of Government Efficiency, co-led by Elon Musk. National correspondent Matt Galko, what is Musk saying about what he's trying to accomplish?
Yeah, the Department of Government Efficiency, this outside agency led by Elon Musk and also former Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy, well, they have some big plans. They're basically on a crusade, as they say, to cut government waste, cut down the bureaucracy, and really return elected powers back to the people who were elected to run the government and not unelected bureaucrats. That's a lot of what their plan is right now. Now, Musk has pointed to publicly available reports, one from the Government Accountability Office from 2022. More than $200 billion worth of federal waste, which he calls just the tip of the iceberg. That's some of the stuff that they want to hack away at. And part of their plans, as they start to develop them, one of the early on recommendations they might have is to have all federal employees stop remote work and return to the office 5 days a week. Ramaswamy says that he predicts maybe 25% of the workforce might resign if they were forced to go back into the office 5 days a week. Now, a couple snags in that. A report recently conducted an audit about remote work for federal employees. About more than 60% do all of their work out of the office to begin with, so it's not necessarily an extremely high number of people out of the office. And also, there are unions that protect the civil workers that are already ready to fight back. Now, the other part of this is that DOJ, they will not have authority to just mandate these recommendations. They will only be recommendations. Ultimately, it will be up to Congress. Now, there are Democrats out there that believe that obviously waste is a bad thing and the government could be more efficient. So it's likely that there could be momentum for some of these ideas. But again, it will fall on Congress more than likely to implement any of their recommendations as they start to take shape over the next couple of years. Steve?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch with the national debt over $35 trillion now. A lot of people who watch the debt are very excited about what these guys may be recommending over the next couple of years. Meanwhile, another terror plot thwarted by federal law enforcement this past week, but top law enforcement and intelligence officials dodged 2 congressional hearings where they were supposed to brief on threats to the homeland. National correspondent Audra Elnishar, what happened there?
Steve, at first this seemed like just a scheduling conflict. Those happen all the time with hearings on Capitol Hill, but we quickly realized there was something more to this. So to set the scene for viewers, every single year for the past 15 years, the House Homeland Security Committee and the Senate Homeland Security Committee get briefings, and the hearing is called Threats to the Homeland. The Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security is there, the head of the FBI is there. And the House's hearing was set for Wednesday. That got postponed. The Senate's was set for Thursday. That got postponed. And when the Senate's got postponed, that got everyone thinking, wait a minute, what happened here? And we quickly realized, I reached out to the FBI, to the DHS. They came back with statements immediately saying, we want to brief lawmakers, but it has to be in a classified setting. That is a step outside of the norm. Usually there's a public component of these hearings where everyone can tune in or see in person what they have to say. And then usually they brief lawmakers in a classified setting, a secured classified area that they can be briefed on more sensitive matters. But now they are saying it can only be in a classified setting. We don't know why. It's possible lawmakers and their committee staff don't know why. It might have to do with the fact that that we're just going to see a transition of power and a whole new slate of nominees that the president-elect has selected to replace these folks. It could be that the threats are so extreme that it's just too sensitive to talk about out loud in this sensitive time. We simply don't know. But it's sparking bipartisan outrage from the Democrats on these committees, the Republicans on these committees. They say it's a break with an important tradition to have this kind of transparency, especially at a time where Americans are more and more skeptical of institutions and see them as politically charged. It is important to hear from these folks. So I don't know that this was a decision made lightly by these national security officials, but it's certainly raising eyebrows. So we'll be watching now, Steve, to see if they either agree, if officials and lawmakers agree on a later date, if they agree to do it in a classified setting, or if lawmakers wait out for President-elect Trump's nominees for these national security positions to be confirmed.
Yeah, and it comes at a time when there were a few arrests for alleged terror plots. Can you just briefly summarize those plots?
Right. So the FBI intercepted basically a man who allegedly planned to bomb the New York Stock Exchange. He was allegedly aligned with ISIS-K, and he thought the stock exchange would be something, in his words, allegedly to wake people up and restart the government. Turns out he was talking to an FBI informant. Thank goodness. Then earlier this fall, there was that alleged Iranian plot to assassinate Donald Trump, and as well as a man in Oklahoma who was an Afghan national who allegedly was planning an attack on Election Day. So these are just the thwarted attacks that we know about. So there's certainly a threatened height environment, and that's just domestically, not to mention all the other chaos happening around the world.
Audra, Matt, great reporting as always. Thanks for your hard work. Back to you.
A man caught on camera dangling on the edge of a San Francisco cliff. He struggled to hang on as a California Highway Patrol helicopter rushed to help. Take a closer look here. A hoist lowered a crew member to grab the man. He was then safely dropped down on the beach. The San Francisco Fire Department says the man wasn't injured, thankfully. Coming up next here on the National News Desk, a school prayer controversy unfolds in Oklahoma as the state superintendent comes under fire. Parents and faculty sound off and demand something be done. And comment concerns a principal of an Ohio school placed on leave after releasing a controversial statement about the election results. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. From reports of AI-generated nude photos circulating around one Pennsylvania school to Oklahoma's top education administrator stirring up controversy. But first, we begin in Ohio, where a school principal is asking for forgiveness after being placed on leave for making controversial post-election comments.
Olentangy Orange High School principal Monica Asher covered in a political controversy following the release of this newsletter she sent to staffers at the high school, in it discussing the results of the presidential election, saying in parts, she's struggled this week to find the right words. I can't write a message that pretends like the election didn't happen, especially when so many of you are struggling with how to move forward. The commentary landing her in deep trouble with the district. The superintendent releasing a district-wide message to staff Thursday indicating Asher had been pulled from the building on administrative leave as the district investigates. Reaction to the news pouring in on social media. Some of those comments, good. Keep your politics out of your job. District administrators aren't speaking on camera about the investigation. However, we were sent a statement saying in part, they're committed to creating a welcoming environment.
I'd say a lot of people are mad. I'd say a lot of people are sad. It's not the intention of these victims' families to destroy LCDS. The idea is to bring change for the better for everyone in the LCDS community.
That's just one parent that shared with me on the common feelings that surrounds both parents and students of Lancaster Country Day School since word got out alleging AI-generated nude photos were being spread online. Since the original Safe to Say tip was anonymously shared to administration in November of 2023, there have been over 50 students now involved. The parent says Susquehanna Regional Police is investigating, speaking with each of the victims, going through hundreds of photos.
And, as a child, no one should have to do that. And I think as a parent, no one should have to do that. And it's devastating for the entire family that we're having to deal with this.
State Superintendent Ryan Walters igniting a firestorm of controversy by ordering school districts to show students the video, which begins with the announcement of a new Office of Religious Liberty and Patriotism. In the video, before he begins to pray, he says,
I will now say a prayer. And to be clear, students, you don't have to join, but if you so wish, I'm going to go ahead and pray.
TPS school board member Dr. Janetti Marshall is also a pastor, but, she says, requiring the district to show the prayer.
It violates the rights of children, parents, the staff, and anyone else that has a buy-in as a stakeholder in this district.
You've heard so much misinformation. You can't ever say a prayer in school. Well, sure you can. Your rights don't stop at the door.
A tennis legend decides to call it quits. The emotional ceremony paying tribute to almost 2 decades of excellence. Looking ahead to stories making headlines this week, the annual Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade will take place in its usual time slot on Thursday morning. This year's parade will have 17 giant character balloons, 22 floats, 11 marching bands, 10 performance groups, and hundreds of clowns. Black Friday deals and discounts will be rolling out all week. Americans are projected to set a record for the most money spent during the holiday season. And Formula One is heading to the Las Vegas Strip for the second time as an internationally popular sport invades America once again. Organizers are expecting more than 300,000 attendees over the three-day event. A sad scene at the end of the Davis Cup this week. Rafael Nadal announced his retirement from tennis after Spain was eliminated by the Netherlands in a 6-4 toss-up. A post-match ceremony in his honor had the 22-time Grand Slam champion in tears. He spent more than 2 decades on tour. Nadal retires with 92 ATP titles total. Wow. A dog-friendly cruise is setting sail next week. The Margaritaville at Sea Islander ship will depart from Tampa next November. The cruise can accommodate 250 dogs. Onboard activities include dog shows, trainings, costume contests, splash stations, and puppy massages. Passengers with the dogs will have balconies with a private relief station and a designated pet butler. All pets boarding the ship require up-to-date vaccinations and health checks. They're not going to want to leave. That'll be all for us on the weekend edition of the National News Desk, America's News. Now, don't forget, you can catch us live from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Check your local listings. You can also watch us online and catch up with the latest headlines on thenationaldesk.com. Thanks for watching the weekend edition of the National News Desk. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and from all of us here, have a great week.